So welcome, Judith, to our web. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share with you and your friends something about integrative breathing.
Right, so everybody who's listening, I'm sure, will be thinking, well, we all know about breathing. We do it every day. So what is integrative breathing? And maybe you can also tell us what drew you to this kind of therapy.
All right. So integrative breathing is using the breath for specifically integration. The let's say the specific form of integrative breathing that I work with is a breath that I have been developing for 44 years. It's called transformational breath. And now it's quite big in the world. We're in over 53 countries doing training programs and lots of different events. So, but integrative breathing is using the breath in a very specific way to create healing, transformation, and integration of what you would call lower energies into a higher frequency or state.
Wow, okay. So I'm thinking a little bit now about yoga and meditation. So how does that relate? And is that where this development that you're talking about originates?
No, not exactly, although I feel it might have Eastern roots,
Okay.
way back because of, let's say, how there was more awareness in the East before it came to the West. Let's just say at the end of a breathing session, which is what we do, we give sessions, people go into a very deep meditative state, and it's not yoga, but it's a form. It could be considered a form of yoga because it is a spiritual, and it could be a practice that people could embrace like yoga. Yoga is more pranayama, and this is a particular breathing that's a little more focused and a little done in a different way.
Okay, so now I'm thinking about something that I had an experience of many years ago, which was called rebirthing. And I think some of your work stems from that as well, doesn't it?
Well, my first experience of integrative breathing was rebirthing. And then I was guided, I would say, along a similar but different path to incorporate other things in with the breathing. Like in our form, we work with toning, we work with invocation, and we actually do a lot of hands-on in the process too, working with the muscles of the respiratory system, finding different acupressure points to stimulate a cellular memory. So we've, in a way, gone a different direction than rebirthing, and yet rebirthing uses a similar, not an exact breathing pattern, but a similar breathing pattern as we do.
Okay, so how did you first come to this practice?
Well, this was in the mid-70s in California. I was living and working there, and at that time I was a metaphysical minister and working on my doctorate in metaphysics. And at that time, I was the form of healing I was doing, spiritual healing, was done mostly through the vehicle of prayer. And then I was exposed to, let's say, given the awareness of bringing breath in with the prayer, and saw how incredibly powerful it was. Some years, maybe 5 years after that, I had actually found out inadvertently that I had a serious life-threatening illness, a tumor in my throat. And I knew that the breath would be the key. I didn't know right away. It was a process of praying and finding out, but the breath would be the key to the healing of that. So I began working with the breath every day. In about 3 months, the tumor was gone, but the breathing took me to deep places in myself where I got in touch with, let's say, repressed expression, emotions that I had not felt, lifestyle changes I need to make. So even though I made those changes, the breath was the key to move that energy and take me into that healing.
It sounds incredibly powerful, Judith. And I think one of the things that my listeners might be thinking, is that it sounds a little bit literally airy, can I say? I can't get my head around it. And I know, as you've got on your website, there's been a lot of scientific studies about the benefits of breathing. To someone who's never done any kind of alternative therapy, what would you say to them?
Well, my, let's say, spiel when I first meet someone and
Okay.
kind of like try to make them aware that there's more to breathing than waiting till the autonomic nervous system kicks in and then a breath comes in, that there's so much more, because first of all, it's the life force. Our breath is not only the air and other elements that go into the bloodstream and cells of the body, but it accesses our whole energy field. So it's an incredible source of energy. In transformational breath, we work very specifically on the physical, the mental, emotional, and the spiritual levels, individually and somehow coherently bringing them together. And so we do something different on each level. And people are not, in general, aware of how much conscious breathing can bring them and how it's really meant to be a lifelong tool that people use every day to improve the quality of their life, give them higher emotional states, and really help them connect to their deepest parts of themselves.
It sounds wonderful. And I'm thinking now, what would be an example we could give listeners of perhaps a physical, say for example, back pain. I've done a lot on back pain because I suffer from back pain, and I've talked to different therapists about this. And we've explored it a little bit in terms of chakras, but how would you talk about that in terms of breath, what someone could do?
So essentially, we don't treat physical conditions, but there's something about working with the life force and freeing it up in someone's whole system that allows physical symptoms to dissipate. And we don't go after anything specifically. But for example, if someone is just breathing in their upper chest and they have low back problems, it is almost a no-brainer to think that by breathing deeper into the body, that there's going to be more energy, more flow, more balance happening. And interestingly enough, those symptoms usually go away. And same thing in reverse. So there's all kinds of, let's say, things that change on the physical by not only working with the energy, but also working with the mental and emotional levels that somehow create some of our physical conditions.
Fantastic. So could you give us a little clue what somebody might expect if they went to this kind of went for this kind of session in terms of integrative breathing?
All right. So in our training, we train literally hundreds of people to do this work professionally every year. In January and February alone, I trained over 100 people. So,
wow.
And it's just amazing how fast, because the bottom line, it works, it brings people so much. So if someone was to come to see one of our certified facilitators, the first thing they would do would just, let's say, have create a social contract, get to see if what people's expectations and intentions are, and see if they meet with who our professional is, and there's a resonance there. And it's after they agree to work together, then we sit down and we do more or less a history and a coaching around what people are looking for, and then create an intention for the session and for overall subsequent sessions. We like to recommend people at least begin with a commitment of 3 sessions, and that way they will be able to experience the 3 levels that we have in transformational breath. So what would happen first after the coaching and intention setting and the, let's just say, the feelings of safety that we want our clients to feel, the breather would lay down, the client would lie down, and our facilitator would have them do a specific breath, and the breath, maybe we could do a little demo of it. And
That would be great. That would be brilliant.
Yes. So they would do this particular breath, and then the facilitator would actually be able to observe that breath and see, number one, are they using the correct muscles? Number two, is the breath going fully through the respiratory system? For most people, the answer of that is no.
Yeah.
So then the facilitator, with our knowledge, we begin to help the client open their breath and start to use the correct muscle structure, which is, of course, our diaphragm. And so the facilitator will do an invocation for the perfect session. And then the facilitator would begin to coach the breather. We'll put on some kind of nice rhythmic breathing to create a little bit of flow. And then the facilitator would coach the breather maybe by putting their hand on the abdomen. So that would encourage the diaphragmatic breathing, or putting their hand on the chest. And then the breather would get coached into breathing areas that are subsequently closed. And also the facilitator would probably give them some affirmations while they're breathing. For example, if the chest was closed and they had them start breathing in the upper respiratory areas, they would probably say, it's safe to love, it's safe to feel my feelings. And so this starts working at the level of the subconscious, reprogramming some of the beliefs that have been stuck in the subconscious. So the breather would actually continue to breathe for about 45 minutes that way.
Oh, 45 minutes.
Yes,
That sounds like a workout to me, Judith.
But what happens, it does seem like a workout, but it's not with the breather, it's the facilitator.
Right.
Because what happens after a few minutes of breathing and the breath starting to open, the breath does something that we call activation.
Right.
Meaning the breath actually starts to breathe the breather. It becomes this automatic thing. And they go to a different space, a different time space, where they're in another dimension. They're still coherent, they can still communicate, but they're in a different dimension. And so they think they've been breathing 5 or 10 minutes, whereas actually the full session is about an hour.
Wow. So it's almost like a trance state.
It is kind of a trance. They're in a deeper level of consciousness.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was, I had a few rebirthing sessions, and it was quite a while ago now. And that began with some of a kind of a cycle of breathing. And it definitely took me to places that I wasn't aware of. It's like memories came up out of my subconscious. They literally kind of like popped up. And had all kinds of weird physical sensations, but I do know it made me feel better. But it was actually quite an intense experience. Now, if somebody is, say, for example, feeling a little ungrounded or super sensitive for some reason, or even trying to deal with trauma in some sense, physical, emotional trauma, would you recommend them to try this therapy or not?
I would say that would be the best thing they could do.
Right.
And I would also like to specify to not all breath works, let's say, work with the mental and emotional the way we do. So I wouldn't say they could expect the level of resolution that happens in transformational breath. We understand where to take the breath when big traumas come up or memories come up, feelings, because there is a specific, let's say, formula for completing whatever comes up. And not all breathworks understand that. I've done my best to share it with the breathwork community. And so it's really important. So if someone's feeling anxious, which people are now, if someone's feeling fearful, this is the time where the breath could help them the most, where they could tap into those fears, because not all of them are about now. Even though people are feeling them now, these situations now could be triggering feelings that have been suppressed from the past. And so the way we work, we breathe into those areas where the fears are stored and actually tap into them, consciously wanting to tap into them.
Are you talking about, sorry to interrupt, but are you talking about physical areas? Are your therapists trained to see where the person is holding something in the body?
Absolutely, yes. And so, and there's also specific areas in the respiratory system where we hold on to particular feelings. So for example, we hold on to anger and grief in our chest. We hold on to our fears in the midsection, the solar plex area that blocks our joy. And then in the lower areas, the lower abdominal area to the pubic bone, has to do with guilt and self-judgment that blocks our creativity. So we
Oh,
understand this, and when we
yeah.
see where someone's closed and we have them start breathing into those areas, the emotions and the memories and the experiences from the past that have been suppressed there actually get activated. And that's where our job comes in as the breathing coach. We keep people breathing in there, or if it gets too intense, we use sound, and that literally transforms that pattern into a higher state. So this is why we call it transformational breath, because major internal patterns are transforming into a higher frequency.
It sounds wonderful, and actually it kind of ties in a little bit into NATE therapy. I was talking about NATE therapy recently, and my NATE therapist does use something, a kind of breathing to get over a particular blockage in the body, which is normally to do with allergic substances, well, in my case anyway. So she desensitizes you from the substance, and then you breathe through it to completely get rid of it from your system, which has been incredibly effective. But that's just a small kind of physical example, if you like, or practical thing that people may be able to hold on to, because although I completely understand what you're saying in terms of it operating on lots of different levels, I think people primarily come to an alternative therapy when their doctor has not been able to solve the problem for a physical condition. But beyond that, I think we're now living in a time, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, where people, like you say, are feeling very anxious and stressed and worried. And some of that is not to do with the current situation. It's to do with things that have happened in the past. And on top of that, I think we're going to see, perhaps, I'm feeling this, I know other people must also be feeling an element of cabin fever after we've been told that we must stay indoors on the whole to stay safe. So do you have any tips for what people could possibly do in this situation, just to help them de-stress and feel less anxious?
All right. Well, we have a simple breathing exercise we call the 100 breaths to joy, which we feel is pretty foolproof for anyone to do. And yet we want them to do it basically starting with the right muscles, at least beginning to use the diaphragm. Because if we don't use the diaphragm, we compensate maybe by using the chest muscles, the back muscles, and that creates stress and tension. That creates more stress and tension. So the key thing, if people are going to do this, is to get to know and work with their diaphragm. So that's kind of something we would like people to check in with initially, to see, okay, am I using my diaphragm?
Sure.
If they're not, we can take them back a step and help them begin to use their diaphragm, and then go on to the 100 breaths to joy. So first of all, what we could do is have everybody sit up and put your hands on your lower abdomen and stomach. And we're going to breathe in and out through our mouth. And we do this in transformational breath in the beginning. And then later on, when we get more advanced, we switch over to the nose breathing.
Okay.
But to begin with, we breathe through the mouth. And we breathe through the mouth in a particular way. We breathe in and we breathe out, and breathe in and breathe out without any pauses.
Okay.
And that particular, what we call circular breath, that creates a certain electromagnetic field that comes into our electromagnetic field and creates all the changes.
Wow.
So I don't know if you need to know all that, but people are saying, oh, this feels funny, this is unnatural.
No, it sounds fantastic, because we are used to pausing, aren't we? We're used to taking.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And then, so is it in and out counts as one if we want to do 100?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, we want to check in, and then those of you who are your listeners who are not using their diaphragm,
Mhm.
we're going to have them change their position in a different way. So first, let's check in,
Mhm.
and we're going to take 10 breaths in and out,
Mhm.
in and out through the mouth. And they're going to feel if their lower abdomen and tummy area is expanding when they breathe. Okay, if it's not, then we're going to switch them in a different position. And those of us who are, then we'll continue in this way. How's that sound?
That sounds wonderful, because I can't remember when I learned about the muscles, like the diaphragm, but it was so long ago that, I can't not know it. However,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I always use it, because I do sometimes still forget. And it's not a difficult muscle to locate. You can actually do it by lying on the floor and breathing in with a book on your abdomen, and you'll soon get to know where it is, or something similar to that. But it does take a while to develop the strength of the muscle, like any other muscle, doesn't it?
It does if you're not used to using it. Some people are born diaphragmatic breathers,
Yeah.
and that's it. And some people are upper chest breathers. Some people are mid uh, area breathers. So and it all reflects different parts of their personality and how they've dealt with life and their life force. So we're going to go ahead and start with the basic, which is where we start in transformational breath,
Mhm.
opening up the lower parts of the respiratory system and using our diaphragm. So I want everyone to get comfortable. You can close your eyes, open your mouth as wide as it is comfortable for you. And we're going to go ahead and breathe without any pauses. And we'll do about 10 of them, and then we'll check back in.
Mhm.
Okay? You might feel a little lightheaded. That's bringing a lot of good oxygen into the brain. Okay, so you will know, folks, if your lower abdomen and stomach area raised. If it did, then we can continue to the 100 breaths. But the second part of this is to put your hand on your upper chest while we do that. Put your hand on your upper chest and the other hand on the lower abdomen so that you can encourage the breath to move fully from that lower part all the way up to the upper. And then on the exhale, just relaxing the diaphragm on the exhale. On that exhale, just allowing the breath to fall out. No pushing, no controlling, which is very unusual. That's how we're not trained to breathe that way. We control our breath, we push it. And yet the true exhale is ultimately just relaxing our diaphragm. Those of you who are not breathing into the lower areas, yes, we'd like to encourage you to lie down, bend your legs at the knees, and really just concentrate, slow your breath down as much as you need to, and bring that breath, use your diaphragm, bring that breath as low into the body as you can. Through using the diaphragm, you want to feel the belly go up on your inhale and down on the exhale. And this could be the beginning of your process to open healthy breathing. If that doesn't work, turn yourself over on your stomach, and then the pressure of your body on the diaphragm will go ahead and create it starting to open. So there's two things, if you're not using your diaphragm, that you can do to begin to use the muscle we were given to breathe with. This is it. There's no getting around that. Okay.
Thank you, Judith. Yeah, so you've all been told now, it doesn't matter what stage you're at, you've no excuse for not trying this at home. So let's go for it, Judith.
All right. So get comfortable and close your eyes. Hands on the chest, hands on the belly. And maybe we'll start with 50 breaths. We don't want anyone to get too activated and not have support. So we'll go ahead and do a few minutes of this just so people can get a sense of it. And then we actually have that downloadable on our website if people want a little practice CD to use.
Fantastic. Thank you, Judith.
Okay, get ready. Relax. So we're at 25. And what I want us to do is to just open our mouth and make some gentle sounds, which will help balance the energy. And then we'll finish with the last 25. Ah, ah, ah. Now back to the breathing. Ah, ah, ah. Just take a few seconds now and see how you feel. See what feels differently. Feeling any tingling, lightheadedness, energy to different parts of our body, more expansion of our breath. Clear, more peaceful, calmer. We can open our eyes, come back.
I certainly feel calmer, Judith.
Well, good, good.
So thank you for doing that. And this is very exciting. So this is something that people can do themselves without harming themselves in any way. And as you said, there's a link on your website, isn't there?
Yes. If you go to our downloadable offerings, there's that, and session CDs, my book, all those things are available on the website. But mostly I totally encourage people to start with those 100 breaths to keep it simple, because this is a very deep work and we want people to have the support they need when they do it. So I really recommend, if you like the 100 breaths, to find a practitioner in your area. We have a lot of them in the UK, so that should be very easy. Yes.
Fantastic. Yes. Great. And can I ask you one more thing, Judith, before I let you go, which is I'm really interested in the integration of the physical, emotional and spiritual aspects of different therapies. And in your experience, is this a therapy that can be useful for accessing those different dimensions? Because I know we started by you mentioning you started with prayer, and I suppose I'm talking about spirituality in a bigger sense now of reaching beyond what we are or what we can see of what we are.
Well, I don't mean to boast, but that's exactly what transformational breath does. It allows us to unify those levels of our being, and so that we can be the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual being that we are, and integrates and heals on each of those levels, and then ultimately brings those levels together so that we can live in peace in a physical body as a spiritual being. So I would say there is probably no better tool than our breath to create that unification.
Fantastic. And what if some of my listeners are interested in working with you and possibly training to become therapists themselves? Where should they start? Should they start by reading one of your books, or what can they do?
I would say go on the website. The website has all the information about our training program and how it works, where they can begin, have some tools readily. And I would say either to begin with a private practitioner or go to a group workshop. We're going to start having some offerings online, and those will be on our website as well. So there's many roads that someone could take to find out more and to experience more.
Fantastic. And given the situation at the moment, which may or may not, continue for several months, in England they're talking about another 6 months. Is this something people can access online, or is it wiser to, if you want to work with someone, to have them in the room?
It's always been up until now an in-person one-on-one, and we're seeing that's not the nature of life right now. So
Yeah.
we are creating online experiences, and yet we don't want people when they're alone to go too deep alone by themselves. So we're starting our online programs with some gentle introductions, and then making things possible for people to expand online, because
Fantastic,
it's what's needed right now.
It's really what's needed, I think. I think breathwork is, although it's perhaps not one of the most popular or well-known alternative therapies, I think it's one of those therapies which in a lot of ways is the least invasive, isn't it? It's the most, it's the easiest to participate. There's no needles involved, for example, like acupuncture or any of that. So it's something that people can practice themselves or begin to experience.
Yes, we call it self-healing,
Yeah.
because the breather is creating the energy that's creating the transformation, and we're there in the beginning to guide them. But ultimately, we want this to be a lifelong self-healing process for everyone. So
that's fantastic, Judith. You've been well worth the wait. What can I say? I knew Judith would be a great addition to our series, and I'm really glad that she's been able to spare the time for us today. Thank you so much, Judith. Is there anything else you'd like to add about forthcoming events, or?
Well, I'd like to give people the website names.
Yes, of course.
If they want to follow up, they can do that, and lots of different avenues they could follow up with. So it's transformationalbreath.com, transformationalbreath.com, or breathe2000.com.
Great, fantastic. And we will have those links on the website as well, if you didn't get a chance to write those down. And will you be ever coming over to this side of Europe once this pandemic is over, do you think, Judith?
Yes, I was there last year.
Okay.
In London, and did a big workshop. And my plan is, on my schedule in October of next year, I'll be doing a teacher training over there. But when I'm there, I like to do as much as possible. So we'll probably do some workshops in London as well.
So October 2021.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, maybe we'll meet then, Judith.
All right. Very nice. Thank you so much for having me and doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Judith, for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.